the Habs and Kent Hughes could make a sneaky move as there's a forward on waivers that could potentially improve the Habs roster. We'll be diving into that, plus a little bit of a review of the Habs Leafs games and some standout players, including Mattias Norlinder really making a case for himself. All that and more on this episode of Habs Digest. But before we get into the video, a quick reminder that about 60% of you watching this video have not hit that subscribe button. And if you like our daily Habs content and you want to see it throughout the whole season, hit that button. I promise you won't regret it. Jesse, let's dive in. The first thing we actually have to talk about is a bit of Logan Mailloux news, and we're going to talk about him in the game recap in the next section of the video, but Logan Mailloux really showed that he was quite good for Montreal this preseason, this prospect camp, and he really showed a lot of flashes, but they decided to send him down to the Rocket, and ultimately, I think this is the right move for Logan Mailloux. While he showed a lot of offensive flashes, the talent is clearly there. There's some defensive stuff he still needs to work on before I think he's a full-fledged NHLer, but yeah, I mean, I just think this is the exact perfect decision at the perfect time from the Habs. What about you?
Yeah, and I think he's going to thrive offensively in the AHL because we've already seen his shot is NHL ready.
Yep.
He's able to get it on net. His skating, his mobility, his size, right? Like I find like he's a really like effortless skater. He gets around the ice really easily for being how big he is. So if he can just kind of work on just a little bit of some defensive stuff, a little bit, which I think is just experience, he's going to come back and he's going to be great. Like he's looking almost NHL ready as it is right now.
Yeah, he looked like he belonged in a lot of these games with just some young mistakes, right? And that's the thing. But there's a lot of guys on the Montreal Canadiens roster who have a bit more experience who are, and like I don't want to say Mailloux was necessarily bad defensively because I think he might get that reputation. And while he definitely has some lapses, Jesse, I thought his back checking, his effort defensively looked pretty good, except for maybe that Jack Hughes play. But I think some people kind of overanalyze that. I mean, to me, I think it's just kind of his gap control, and maybe some decision making. But man, like I really think that there's a world where he plays a good amount of NHL games this year. What do you think about that?
I think you're right on the money. Like I said, I think he's going to go to the AHL and really dominate offensively. Like he's almost too good for the AHL offensively, but he's really just going there to kind of refine his defensive game. So expect just to see him literally just tear it up, which is going to be great for the Rocket. I think they're going to be much more competitive this year. They're not just going to be fighting for a playoff spot. They're going to get in there. They're going to coast in there easily this year with how stacked I think of a team we have. And I think he'll be a big contributor to that. But not only that, he'll contribute to the Canadiens as well. He'll get his time. And I think at the right time, that'll be so good for his experience.
Yeah, and there's some players down there that I think could pair well with him, whether it's Jayden Struble, whether it's William Trudeau, or potentially Norlinder, who we're actually going to dive into now. But I think Mailloux's in for a nice season. It'll be cool to follow his progress in Laval. But let's dive into the game last night, Jesse. And Norlinder impresses big time. We're going to show the game score graph like we do in every single video. Of course, credit to National Stat Trick, Don Precision, Hockey Stat Cards, as always, for making these very beautiful plots. But we got to take a look here. Sean Monahan, Kirby, Dach, and Nick Suzuki, Jesse, the three centers were dominating the game on the advanced testing, and the eye test showed all that as well, with Logan Mailloux right behind and Juraj Slafkovsky there as well, all having very good games. But Mattias Norlinder, while this graph has him about the middle of the pack, Jesse, his offensive production was phenomenal in that game last night. He scored a goal on the power play. He was all over the ice, and as Habs Go 31 on Reddit posted, I almost said tweeted, is a player like Mattias Norlinder putting any positive pressure on your upcoming roster? And San Luis said, I would say yes, and that's the goal of every player. When you have those tough roster decisions, that's always a good sign because you know the team feels elevated. And I feel like that is pretty much the perfect quote to talk about how these guys are raising each other up, right? That pressure from beneath really makes guys want to step up. And I think Norlinder was just the perfect example.
It's really so true. Like we do not win that game last night without the play that Norlinder made. You know, we do not tie that game in that third period because he made a really clutch play. Like, you know, it's great we're seeing him play well offensively, but when you're able to keep the puck in the zone, well, that's now a good defensive play. You know, that is good offensively as well, but showing a lot of good athleticism on that, right? To keep the puck in. Obviously, the puck then gets to Anderson and we're able to tie it up late to then bring it to overtime. But those are the type of plays that are so important, right? And you got to feel like he's a player that fills a need, kind of coming out of nowhere. He's impressed me a lot. Really, like, as a lot of Habs fans, we just weren't expecting this, but we've just seen him kind of get better over training camp. And again, you know, serving a really good function on our power play, which again is something that we need. These are all factors that are going to help Mattias Norlinder in his case to actually make the Habs is the fact that he could help us in a part of our play that we really need. How many times last year did we see the puck kind of leave the zone on a power play or near the end of the game where, we needed to keep it in, obviously, and obviously when you're able to keep that in, it's just like, how else can you score on the power play? But besides that, like, it's a lot harder than it looks for these players to be able to make these skill plays to keep it in. So I don't know. That was huge for me. I'm just really, really surprised for what I'm seeing so far, and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, the old memes. Norlinder is back on the menu, boys. Like he could very like he's making a case, Jesse, to make the roster over someone like a Justin Barron, who has just not shown what we wanted to see from him in this preseason. I know they play different sides of defense, Norlinder being left, Barron being right, but I see a world where, like, I mean, look, they're both waiver exempt. But I see a world where the Habs, even if Norlinder doesn't start the season on the roster, where they kind of bring these guys up and down, test them out, because I think he's shown enough that he deserves a legitimate shot. But let's dive into the final topic of the video, and it also involves some sending up, sending down, if it were to happen. But there was some, the waiver news came out today, and as Elliot Friedman outlined, I'll just show you here once I bring this up. We got a bunch of names here that you don't really have to pay attention to, but if you take a look at Ottawa, Bernard Dach actually is very interesting too. A first-round draft pick, I think, from the 2019 draft as well, which is, Kent Hughes loves that. But anyway, he's a defenseman. I don't think the Habs will go for him. But Egor Sokolov, Jesse, is a very interesting name. And if you guys followed Laval, you might be familiar with that name, Egor Sokolov, because he was very good for the Belleville Senators in the AHL last year. Jesse, in his last 2 seasons with the Belleville Senators, 109 points in just 134 games. This guy is an AHL beast. He's 6'3", 222 pounds, with a rocket of a shot. He knows how to put the puck in the back of the net. He knows how to score. Do you think that Kent Hughes could pull a sneaky signing and bring in Egor Sokolov? His money is very, very low. I believe it's under $1 million for this season, and the Habs like their big guys. I mean, is there any world where the Habs could do this for their bottom 6?
Well, you can't underestimate the waiver pickups. Like, Kent Hughes has made some really good pickups in the past. Well, at least this organization, and getting Montembeault, who was a waiver pickup, and then most recently in Jonathan Kovacevic, who was by Kent Hughes. Like, these are both players that have been huge for us. Like, we just sometimes think we see the players on waivers and maybe underestimate them a little bit, but these are still NHL players that, under the right circumstances, can really benefit a team, right? And we've seen that with a lot of NHL players. That being said, just because we're so stacked, like, we have so many players internally that I want to see, that I want to get those chances. So many of those young guys, which, I feel like we need to play them at that higher level before kind of making a decision of who we're going to keep and who we're going to develop, because we need to make some trades sooner than later. And you got to feel like you need to see them play before you're really making these trades and making these calls on their future like that. But there is a lot of potential there all the same, right? You can make a solid case. Solid AHL showing so far, been really good in the limited amount of time he's played in the NHL. So you got to feel like he's going to be picked up by somebody, but I don't know if it's the right fit for us right now.
And I think that's a fair take, right? I mean, Montreal has so many guys. You got the Ulanens, the Harvey Pinards, the Michael Pezzettas of the world, who are, you kind of want them to stay on the roster while Harvey Pinard is still waiver exempt. But right now the Habs have 4 cuts to make. And let's say they keep Cayden Primeau up because they're afraid another team might claim him off waivers if they send him down. Then you say you keep him up, you still have to make 4 cuts from your defense and your forwards. So the only way I see the Habs doing this is this hypothetical move. Let's say they send down Norlinder. Let's say they send down Barron. Let's say they send down Heineman. And and let's say they waive Armia. There are your cuts, right? So if they waive Armia and he's going to pass through, now you still need to find room for Sokolov. Is there a world where maybe they could waive Tanner Pearson as well? I mean, no one's going to pick up that contract, right? Vancouver had to almost like pay to give it away in a sense. So no one's going to pick that up. And I know that maybe they wouldn't want to do that with Pearson. He's actually looked quite good in this preseason. I think the plan is for him to be in the NHL. Where I see this as like the only world where the Habs can end up doing this is if they waive Armia and maybe Pearson. I could be wrong, but do you think there's any world they do that for someone like a Sokolov, just on the off chance that he ends up being a very solid NHL scorer?
No, I don't think that they'll end up waiving Pearson. I think you got to weigh all the options, but finally, I don't think that they will. And again, too, I think that they want to see Heineman play just because he's a little bit older in his development, and they want to give him that shot. So they want to really see what he can do at that NHL level. kind of before making a determination on them. They're giving them basically every opportunity. So if we weren't really giving these shots to these young guys like we were doing, and if we didn't have so many great young guys kind of coming up, I would say yes, absolutely be a great idea. But yeah, there's just so many people that are vying for those spots right now. I'd just be really interested in just really focusing on what we have and developing, internally at this time.
Yeah, and you know what? That's pretty fair. I guess I'm just sort of enthralled with the idea of a 6'3" guy that can score a lot of points. Seems like to be the Habs' favorite.
Mm-hmm.
They're always fun to watch. But you're right. I mean, I think giving someone like a Hanneman a shot at the forward position over someone like a Sokolov would probably be a better option. But all the same, it's a fun hypothetical, and you never really know what Kent Hughes, right? They make their waiver claims very carefully, and hey, I see a world where it might happen. Let us know down below. What do you think? Do you think there's any world where the Habs could sign Egor Sokolov? Maybe unlikely, but I'm not going to say impossible. Let us know down below. We'd love to hear from you. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 8,000 subs, and we really appreciate the support. I'm Josh Gauss, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.